For 10 years, I mourned my brother. I stood at his funeral crying in the rain, thinking I'd lost the closest person to me. I thought I knew the truth, until a teenage girl knocked on my door and shattered my entire world. It turns out, everything I knew about my family was a lie. Who is actually behind my brother's accident? And why were we forbidden from seeking the truth? Today, I'm finally sharing the story. My name is Ithan Parker, 42, high school history teacher, the kind who's never late, never raises his voice, the kind everyone calls dependable. For 10 years, I believed my older brother was dead. Not missing. Dead. Daniel drowned in a boating accident when I was 32. There was a funeral, rain coming down sideways, my mother's hand gripping mine so hard it left marks. There was a casket. I never asked if there was a body inside it. You don't ask things like that at your brother's funeral. You just stand there in your one good suit and let the grief do whatever it wants to you. For 10 years, that grief sat in my chest like a stone. It got smaller with time. It never left. I opened the door, and a teenage girl was standing on my porch in the porch light, rain just starting behind her. Dark hair stuck to her forehead, a backpack slung over one shoulder like she might need to run. "Are you... sorry." She swallowed hard. "Are you Ithan Parker?" "That's me." "I think your brother might have been my dad." I laughed. A short, ugly sound, because the alternative wasn't something I was ready to feel yet. "My brother didn't have kids," I said. "He died before he ever had the chance." She didn't flinch. She didn't look away either, which is the part I keep coming back to. A liar looks away. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a stack of photographs, soft and worn at the edges, like they'd been held 1,000 times by someone who needed them to be true. She put them in my hands. The top one was Daniel, younger than I remembered, sitting on a porch I didn't recognize, holding a baby wrapped in a yellow blanket. "That's me," she said quietly. "He's holding me."
Imagine holding a piece of paper that completely rewrites your entire existence. In that 1 second, the dead man in his memory wasn't dead anymore. He was a father and a stranger.
I stared at that photograph until the edges of my vision blurred. It was him. I'd know my brother's face in any decade, in any light. The left eyebrow that lifted just a fraction higher than the right. The small scar above his lip from the time he wiped out on his bike trying to impress a girl from down the street. "This isn't possible," I whispered. "I know how it sounds." Her voice cracked on the last word. "My mom died 3 years ago. Before she went, she told me his name, told me he loved me, then told me he was gone and that I should stop asking questions about him." "Then why are you here, if she told you to stop?" Her jaw tightened. "Because after she died, I went through her things and I found something she never showed me while she was alive." She dug into the backpack one more time and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "It's a letter," she said, "addressed to you." My name, in handwriting I hadn't seen in 10 years, stared back at me from the envelope. I felt Rachel, my wife, come up behind me in the doorway, her hand landing on my shoulder. "Ithan," she said softly, "what's going on?" I couldn't answer her. I was too busy staring at a letter from a dead man, written in my brother's hand, addressed to me, and something in my chest told me everything I thought I knew about my family was about to come apart at the seams. I didn't open it that night. I know how that sounds. If someone handed you a letter from a brother you buried a decade ago, wouldn't you tear it open right there on the porch? But some part of me knew that the moment I read it, I'd have to accept something impossible was real. And once you accept that, there's no walking back into the comfortable lie you'd built your life on top of. So Lily stayed in the guest room that night. Rachel made up the bed without asking me a single question, one of about 1,000 reasons I love her, and I sat at the kitchen table till 2 in the morning, just turning the envelope over and over, like if I looked at it long enough, the answer would show up before I had to open it. Exhaustion won eventually. I opened it. Daniel's handwriting. Slanted, a little messy the way he always wrote, like his thoughts moved faster than his hand could keep up. The letter wasn't long. It didn't need to be. It talked about a summer when we were boys, hiding in an old fishing shack during a storm, swearing to each other that no matter what happened, we'd always come back for one another. No stranger could have known that. No con artist looking for a payday could write words that small, that specific, that real. My hands were shaking by the time I got to the last line. If you're reading this, then it's time you knew the truth. I'm sorry it took this long. I'm sorry for everything you had to carry.
It's one thing to lose a brother, but to receive a message from him from beyond the grave? That's not just a letter. It's an invitation to a life you thought was gone forever.
I sat in the dark and cried, for the first time in 10 years. The next morning, I drove straight to my mother's. She opened the door before I even knocked, like she'd been standing there waiting for the sound of my car. Ethan. Something brittle in her voice already. Mom, I need to show you something. I held out the letter. Watched her eyes move across the page. Watched the blood drain out of her face in real time. Where did you get this? A girl showed up at my door last night, says she's Daniel's daughter, says her name is Lily. Her hand flew to her mouth. For a second, I thought she might go down right there in the doorway. You need to stop asking questions. Sharp now, almost frantic. Ethan, please, for your own good, let your brother rest in peace. Mom, what is going on? Why would you say that? Because some things are better left buried. Tears now, and they didn't look like grief. They looked like fear. Please, Ethan, I'm begging you. But how could I let him rest, holding proof in my hands that maybe, just maybe, he never had? I couldn't let it go. Of course I couldn't. If you've ever loved someone and lost them, you understand. The second there's a sliver of hope the loss wasn't real, you'll tear the whole world apart looking for the truth. So I started digging. I requested the original accident report. Took weeks. Phone calls, dead ends, a clerk who kept forgetting to call back. When the file finally landed on my desk, the first thread came loose almost immediately. 2 witnesses, 2 different stories. What time the boat went out? Who else was supposedly on board? One mentioned a second person in the water that night, a detail that never made it into the official summary. A second person. I read that line 20 times. Easy?
We spend our lives trusting official reports, but this is the moment the whole foundation cracks. You realize that sometimes the truth isn't just hidden, it's been actively erased.
I called Rachel from the car, my voice not quite steady. Something's wrong with this report, it doesn't add up. Ethan. Careful, like she was choosing every word. What if you're seeing connections that aren't there? I wasn't imagining this. I could feel it the way you feel a storm building before the first drop hits. The deeper I went, the worse it got. I pulled financial records I probably shouldn't have had access to. A former student of mine worked at the bank now, owed me a favor from years back when I helped him pass his senior year. What he found nearly stopped my heart cold. Activity on Daniel's old account, small transactions. Nothing flashy, the kind designed not to draw attention. 3 years after his supposed death. 3 years. I sat in the parking lot outside that bank for a long time, just staring at the printout, feeling the ground go soft under me. A dead man doesn't spend money. I thought about my mother's face, the fear in it. That wasn't the fear of a woman who'd simply lost her son. Something was very wrong with the story I'd been told for 10 years. And the worst part, I think she'd known it the whole time. Lily ended up staying longer than either of us planned out loud. A few days turned into a week. A week turned into something we both understood without saying. She wasn't leaving until we found the truth together. We made an unlikely team. A 42-year-old teacher and a 17-year-old who'd spent her whole life chasing a father she never got to know. But grief binds people that way. We were chasing the same ghost. That's when Victor Hale's name first showed up. On a property lease, tied to an address where some of those mystery transactions had started. Then again, on a separate account built specifically to move money quietly between places. "Who's Victor Hale?" Lily asked one evening, the two of us hunched over the kitchen table, surrounded by printouts and old photographs. "I don't know. Daniel mentioned a business associate once, years before the accident. Someone he didn't trust. I never thought much of it at the time." We dug further. Victor Hale, it turned out, was wealthy. The kind of man whose name shows up in filings, never in photographs. He'd been connected to Daniel's old company, the one Daniel had quietly walked away from a year before he died. Walked away from, or been pushed out of. I couldn't tell which yet. The properties under false identities were what unsettled me most. Whoever was alive after that accident had gone to a lot of trouble to disappear completely. Renting under names that weren't real. Living somewhere nobody would think to check. That's not a man on vacation. That's a man hiding from something. Or someone. It was Lily who found the photograph. She'd been scrolling through old community forum archives, the kind of internet backwater nobody checks, and found a grainy shot from a small-town festival dated 4 years after the accident. In the background, slightly out of focus, was a man who looked exactly like my brother. I stared at that photo until my eyes burned. Ithan. Her voice was shaking. Is that him? I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. 10 years of grief was colliding head-on with one devastating possibility. My brother might still be alive?
This is the point where the sadness turns into pure cold rage. 10 years of grief, 10 years of funerals, all for a lie. How do you even begin to process that?
I want you to understand something about grief. It's not just sadness, it becomes part of who you are. For 10 years, I'd built a version of myself around being the brother who survived, the one left behind to carry our family's memory forward. If Daniel had been alive this whole time, then everything I thought I knew about myself, about my family, about loyalty, was sitting on a lie. That thought didn't bring hope. Not at first. It brought rage. He's alive! My voice came out flat, cold, not really mine. He's been alive, and he let us bury an empty box. He let our mother cry at a funeral for 10 years. He let me. Ithan, we don't know the whole story yet, Rachel said gently. I know enough. I caught myself a second too late. Lily was right there, eyes down at the table. He abandoned us. Let us grieve a man living some secret life under a fake name. Lily's voice was quiet. He abandoned me too, before I even got the chance to know him. The anger in the room shifted, settled over both of us like something heavy. We'd gone into this hoping for a reunion. Instead, we were staring down a betrayal. I didn't sleep that night. Just lay there replaying every memory I had of him, wondering how much of it had even been real. I thought of my mother's terrified face, the way she'd begged me to stop. She knew. She had to have known. It was Rachel who found the next piece, almost by accident, helping me sort through the documents. Buried in the old accident paperwork was a single insurance claim, filed not by Daniel, but against an unnamed party for what the paperwork vaguely called threats made against the policyholder prior to the incident. Threats. Ithan. Her voice wasn't steady. I don't think your brother ran because he wanted to. She looked up at me. I think someone was hunting him, and I think he had to disappear just to survive. Everything I thought I understood collapsed all over again. If Daniel hadn't left by choice, if he'd been running from something real, then the man I'd spent days hating wasn't a coward who walked out on his family. He was someone who'd sacrificed everything to protect us instead. I went back through the financial records with new eyes, looking now not for evidence of betrayal, but for evidence of fear. And once I started looking for it, I found it everywhere. The properties under false names weren't a comfortable second life. They were sparse, cheap. The kind of place you hide in, not the kind you enjoy. The small, careful transactions weren't indulgent. They were survival money. Just enough to live quietly. Never enough to draw a second look. And Victor Hale's name wasn't tied to a partnership. It was tied to fraud. I spent 2 days going through old filings connected to Daniel's former company, the one he'd quietly left a year before he disappeared. What I found made my stomach turn over. A financial scheme buried in the books. Millions funneled through shell accounts. All of it traced back to documents that looked on paper like they carried Daniel's signature. Except they didn't. Not really. A forensic document examiner, a contact Rachel found through work, confirmed it within the week. The signatures had been forged. Someone had used my brother's identity to authorize transactions that could put a man away for the rest of his life. Daniel hadn't disappeared because he was guilty. He'd disappeared because he found the fraud, and someone needed him gone before he could expose it. I sat with that for a long time, the weight of it pressing on my chest like something physical. My brother didn't drown that night. My brother ran for his life, and the only person who could tell me why was the one person who'd spent 10 years insisting I stop asking questions. I drove to my mother's that same evening. Didn't call first. When she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask what was wrong. She already knew. Mom. My voice was quiet. I need you to tell me everything, right now. She stood in the doorway a long moment, porch light cutting shadows across her face. Then, after 10 years of silence, she stepped aside and let me in. Sit down, Ethan, she whispered. It's time you knew. She made tea neither of us touched. I think she needed something to do with her hands. Your brother came to me 3 weeks before the accident. She started, stopped, started again. He'd found something in the company books, money disappearing into accounts that shouldn't have existed. Victor Hale. She nodded slowly, eyes already wet. He was... God, Ethan. Victor carried your father's casket. He stayed close to us for years after your father passed. We trusted him completely. He helped Daniel build that company from nothing. My stomach dropped. The betrayal hadn't come from outside the family. It came from someone who'd sat at our table, who'd stood beside us at a funeral. Daniel found out he was stealing, she said. Years of it, hidden behind forged paperwork. When Daniel confronted him, Victor didn't deny it. He threatened him instead. Said if Daniel went to the authorities, he'd frame him for the whole thing. Ruin his name. Take everything, including this family. So he ran. He had no choice. Victor had friends who could make problems disappear. Her hands shook around the cup. So he came up with another plan. The accident. I helped him stage it.
The betrayal here isn't just about the brother running away. It's the realization that the one person who should have been your anchor, your mother, was the captain of this deception. Could you ever truly forgive that?
The floor seemed to tilt under me. You helped him fake his own death? I helped him survive. Her voice cracked wide open. Ethan, you have to understand. Victor was already making threats against this family. If Daniel disappeared completely, presumed dead, Victor had no reason to come after the rest of us. The trail would go cold. We'd be safe. And you let me grieve him. You let me stand at an empty grave and cry for a brother who was alive somewhere hiding, and you knew the whole time. I had to protect you. If anyone had known, Victor would have found a way to use it. The fewer people who knew, the safer he stayed. Where is he now? Is he even still alive? She hesitated, and that hesitation scared me more than anything she'd said yet. I don't know for certain, she admitted. He checks in, rarely, carefully, never with details that could be traced. The last time I heard from him was almost a year ago. And Victor? Is he still out there? Her face went pale. He still has connections to this family, Ethan. He still calls. Sometimes he still visits. My blood went cold. He's still close to us? She nodded, tears running freely now. He's been waiting all these years to see if Daniel would resurface. And I think he already knows something's happening. I think he knows Lily found you. I left her house that night feeling like the ground had been pulled out from under me completely. 10 years grieving a man who was alive. And the real villain in our story had walked freely among us the whole time, waiting, watching. And now, he knew about Lily. I called Rachel the second I got in the car. We need everything we can find on Victor Hale, tonight. What we found over the following days was worse than I'd let myself imagine. Victor hadn't just stolen money from Daniel's company a decade ago. He'd spent the years since quietly consolidating control, manipulating family trusts, inserting himself as an advisor to businesses connected to people who'd once trusted my father completely. An empire built on a stolen foundation, and the only living person who could prove exactly how it was built was my brother. When I told Lily everything, she sat in stunned silence for a long moment. So, I wasn't just looking for my dad this whole time, she finally said, voice hollow. I was being used.
There's something so haunting about that. Being a child who was actually a secret weapon. It makes you wonder, how many of us are carrying burdens for our parents that we don't even have names for yet?
What do you mean? She reached into her backpack, a hidden pocket sewn into the lining I hadn't noticed before, and pulled out a small flash drive. My mom gave me this before she died. Told me to keep it safe, to give it to Daniel's family if I ever found them. She never told me why. We plugged it into a laptop with hands that weren't quite steady. Documents, financial records, the original unforged versions of the same paperwork Daniel had found all those years ago. The evidence that proved exactly what Victor Hale had done. My brother hadn't just disappeared to protect himself. He'd hidden the evidence somewhere Victor could never reach it, inside the lining of a backpack, carried for years by a daughter who never knew what she was holding. He used my mom to hide this, Lily whispered, tears falling freely now. And she never told me. She carried this secret her entire life, and then she died, and I had no idea what I was even carrying around. I felt something fierce and immediate settle over me. You weren't just looking for your father, I told her. You were carrying the key to finally bringing him home. That night, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I know you found everything. I know Victor is close. We need to meet. Somewhere safe. Tonight. It was Daniel. He gave us an address. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere outside the reach of prying eyes. We drove there in silence. None of us quite able to say out loud what we were hoping for. A man stepped out of the shadows near a weathered old building, and for the first time in 10 years, I saw my brother's face in person. Older. Tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. But it was him.
Looking at someone you mourned for a decade, it must be like seeing a ghost that decided to wake up. Is it a miracle, or is it a scar that will never fully heal?
Daniel. The years collapsed between us in an instant. We held each other a long time, neither of us speaking, both of us crying in a way I hadn't let myself do since the funeral. I'm sorry, he finally said, voice breaking. For everything you went through, for everything Mom had to carry. I never wanted this for you. I know. Mom told me everything. His eyes shifted to Lily, standing quietly beside Rachel. You found my daughter. She found me, I said. He walked toward her slow, careful, like she was something he might break. Lily, I am so sorry. I wanted to be there. Every day I thought about you. Then why weren't you? Because the moment Victor knew you existed, he'd have used you against me. I thought distance was the only way to keep you safe. My mom never told me why you were gone, just that you loved me and that I shouldn't go looking for the truth. She protected you exactly the way I asked her to. He paused, something heavier crossing his face. There's something else. About your mother. Something I need you to know. Lily's breath caught. What is it? Your mother wasn't just someone I loved. Victor tried to get close to her once, years before you were born, back when he realized he couldn't get to me directly. He tried to find a way to control me through the people I loved. What happened? She refused him. Chose me. And then, after I had to disappear, she chose to protect you, even from a man who would have used you as a weapon against your own father. His voice caught. Your mother was one of the bravest people I've ever known. Lily broke down completely. I watched my brother hold his daughter for the first time in her life, and despite everything, the years, the rage, the confusion, something close to peace settled over the moment. It wouldn't last long. We spent that night in a quiet, anonymous motel on the edge of town, the five of us working through everything that still needed saying. Daniel explained how he'd survived 10 years, moving between towns, never staying long enough to be found, always watching for any sign Victor's people had located him. I have what I need now. He nodded at the flash drive. Combined with what you already found, his whole scheme falls apart. The weeks after blurred into lawyers, forensic accountants, careful and deliberate planning. Daniel worked with authorities to expose the fraud, laying out evidence buried for a decade. Victor Hale's empire, built on stolen money and borrowed trust, collapsed fast once the truth came out. Arrested. Charged. The kind of fall that takes a lifetime to build and only days to destroy. My mother finally got to hold her son again, after 10 years of silent grief disguised as acceptance. I watched her hold him the way I imagined she'd dreamed of every single day since that staged accident, and something in my own chest finally loosened after a decade of unexplainable sorrow. Lily had it harder. She'd spent her whole life believing she had no family beyond her mother. Now, suddenly, she had a father back from the dead, an uncle she barely knew, and a family history built entirely on secrets and sacrifice. "I don't know where I belong in any of this," she admitted to me one evening, weeks after everything had settled. "You belong wherever you choose to be," I told her. "Nobody's going anywhere. Not anymore." She split her time between us after that, slowly building something real with the father she'd spent her whole life searching for, while also becoming, in every way that mattered, something close to a daughter to Rachel and me. Daniel and I talk every week now, sometimes about the past, working slowly through 10 years of separation. Sometimes about nothing at all, just two brothers catching up on lost time, the way we used to as boys, hiding from storms in an old fishing shack, promising each other we'd always come back. He kept that promise, in the end. It just took 10 years, and the courage of two women, one who never broke under pressure, and one who carried a secret in her backpack without even knowing it, to finally bring him home. My mother once told me that family isn't always about the people who never lie to you. Sometimes it's about the people who lie to protect you, who carry impossible weight silently, who sacrifice everything, even the truth, to keep the people they love safe. I used to think that was just an excuse for betrayal. Now I understand it as the deepest form of love I've ever seen up close. We sat together for dinner last Sunday, all of us. My mother, Rachel, Daniel, Lily. For the first time in over a decade, there were no secrets left at that table. Just a family, finally whole, finally honest, finally home.
10 years of lies, one incredible truth, and a family finally back together. It's been a long road, but I've learned that no secret stays buried forever. What was the most shocking part for you? Drop a comment below. I read all of them. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to stay updated. See you in the next video.